Have you ever watched yourself watching television? That's what's involved in media literacy. And that's the subject of today's Austin Faith Dialogue. Please join us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Richard Thompson of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, your host for today. And today we're pleased to reflect upon that reflection called media literacy, looking at ourselves, looking at television, a very important part of media awareness. It's a nationwide movement, and it's one that has local expression that we're going to be exploring with our two guests. We have first Pat Crovasier, the Community Relations Coordinator for Del Valley Independent School District.
Correct.
And we also have Father Harry Dean from John Henry Newman Parish. And we're delighted to have both of you so that you're representing both the school and the church in regard to media literacy. Mm-hmm. And I think, Pat, we'll start with the school.
Okay.
Because you hear literacy and you think of schools,
That's right. That's right.
And tell us what you have in mind for Del Valley.
Well, we are going to actually be trying a pilot project this summer in summer school. We will be taking 15 5th and 6th graders, and we will be doing we're really calling it computer media, you know, an all-encompassing kind of academy, if you will. It will be a 6 weeks course. We are going to be enlisting the aid of some of the good folks over at the University of Texas, using some of the materials that are available through the Media Literacy Center, and really kind of forging new ground in here. I had become aware of the curriculum in Canada many, many years ago when I had heard Liz Toman, whom we'll be seeing more about later on in the show,
right,
but was very intrigued with the whole idea that you could really start at that level. Even though I'm an administrator, I do have an educational background, but not in the elementary level. And the director of elementary curriculum had come to me several months ago and had talked about wanting to do something like this in summer school, and she knew that I had a media background. And so we talked about it, and it was very interesting because I was going to have to research. I didn't have my folders anymore with the information for the Media Literacy Center, and then all of a sudden, you know, the information appeared in the newspaper, and I went, aha, this is all going to come together.
We did have this conference in February on media awareness in which we brought Liz Toman, and we're going to be showing some video from that conference in just a few moments. Somebody that was at the conference and actually helped us tape it, Father Harry Dean, we want to thank you for that.
I was glad to do it.
And tell us a little bit about where you're coming from in the church as far as media literacy is concerned.
Well, we are, as you know, about the work of proclaiming a message, the message of Jesus Christ. And we realize that in this day and age that mass media is a way of communication, in a very powerful way. We also know that inasmuch as we want to communicate our message outbound, that there's lots of messages coming back inbound to our Christian peoples. We want to try and, in a media literacy kind of way specific to the Christian faith, say, take your faith and bring that to the dialogue with whatever medium that you're engaging.
Okay. Well, I think that we'll have a chance to put in context what each of you says after we look a little bit from what we'll be seeing Liz Toman at that conference. We'll be seeing Jane Wallace from KXAN, who's talking about the industry in a broader sense. And then we're going to be seeing Ellen Mortella from the University of Texas, where they have a very, of course, leading program in media throughout the country. So let's take a look at that tape just for a moment.
If we do nothing else than give kids and parents the discipline to be more aware about what they're watching and how much they're watching, and if we could do this for 10,000 families in Austin, 1 million families in Texas, 20 million families in the United States, we could totally revolutionize the media culture that we think we're powerless to change. Learning to be conscious of who we are and what's going on while we're swimming in the media culture is called critical viewing skills. That is, applying critical thinking, the consciousness, to whatever media experience we've chosen to spend time with. That actually critical viewing skills although they're important, it's not enough. It's also important to go behind the frame and ask, how did these images even get to our living room? What is the impact of images in the context of economic, political, historical, and cultural forces that shape or constrain what we, the audience, receives? For 40 years, we've had a circle of blame about violence in the media operating in our culture. Viewers blame the writers blame the producers blame the networks say, well, if the advertisers wouldn't buy time, we wouldn't produce it, and the advertisers blame the viewers for watching. So we just go round and round in this circle of blame. And it's all fueled by one unanswerable question. Does watching violence on TV cause a person, particularly my child, to go out and commit some heinous crime? I think it's time to start asking different questions about this issue, to dig deep, to go behind the frame of what's on the screen and ask, how is media violence harmful, not just to individuals, not just to my child, but to the larger society, to our human compact, to the democracy? How is it affecting all of us as a whole? That's a much bigger question.
If I'm better informed as a general manager of a television station about how you feel in terms of your attitudes and interests, then I can do a much better job on your behalf in terms of making decisions about what programming to broadcast, and in terms of being an advocate for your position with NBC or the National Association of Broadcasters or the FCC or Congress or whoever the heck I may be talking to about these kinds of issues.
There's always a two-side to the coin about children and television issues. On the one side, we want to be able to encourage our children to develop in wonderful ways through educational TV and informational TV. So we're always looking for the positive side of television, of what it brings into children's lives. And on the other side, we're concerned about minimizing the negative consequences by steering them clear of, or helping them deconstruct, in Elizabeth's terms, the programming that is violent, that has sexual content we find objectionable, or uses language that we'd rather not have in our homes. Well, two things have happened this past year to help parents in both of these regards, to try to identify for parents what is programming that has an informational and educational nature, and to try to help parents guide their children from programming that may have content that is objectionable. Elizabeth made reference to it, and I'd like to talk about those two issues and sort of the current state of policy regarding these tools. First of all, last February, with the Telecommunications Act of 1996, Congress passed a law that said that as of 1998, January of 1998, every television receiver set in this country is going to come along with a V-chip, or a blocking device, that can be set by parents to screen out programs they don't want their children to watch. Along with that V-chip, for parents to be able to set their sets so that you can block out a program in advance that you don't like. You know, we have VCR Plus, which is a way of identifying programs. Along with that V-chip comes the necessity for a rating system. How do we know before we see the show what is on it? And most of you are probably aware of the fact that the television industry, at the encouragement of President Clinton late February, early March, agreed to develop a voluntary rating system. That rating system was organized by a group called RIG, that really is their name, the Ratings Industry Group, that was headed by the president of the National Cable Television Association, Decker Anstrom, and the president of the NAB, Eddie Fritz, and the chair of the entire event was Jack Valenti, who more than 20 years ago now developed the MPAA rating system. You also are probably aware of the fact, since in our community, Diane Holloway of the Austin American-Statesman has done really a marvelous job of following this issue and presenting us with a number of articles in the Statesman about the rating system and how it's being used, that the rating system went into effect in January 1st, for all of the broadcast networks, and gradually some of the cable stations and even PBS will be coming on board later in the spring and through the summer.
Okay, well, that was quite a bit to take in a short period of time, but you did have Liz Tolman, the director of the Center for Media Literacy in Los Angeles, who was here, and the statement from Jane Wallace about wanting input from folks, and then this last piece by Ellen Mortello saying about the V-chip and the rating system as all really kind of a part of this movement of media literacy. So this is the first time you've seen that package. What was your response to it?
Well, the critical viewing skills is what we're going to be working with the most, so that children can learn to dissect the information that they're seeing, and by teaching them some of the production skills, they will be able to learn how to watch. We think it's also going to be very interesting to get the parental response. What kind of discussion will this prompt when the family is sitting around watching a television show, when you've now got the child saying, oh gosh, now that commercial was made in such and such a way, or when they were doing that program, this might be how they've done it. So I think it's just the fact that those children are learning how television is put together is going to have a very interesting impact on the home.
I've heard at this conference that we had that one of the signs that media literacy is working is when some member of the family keeps being critical about what they see on television, and the rest of the family says, no, wait a minute, let's just enjoy it.
Right.
But I think that you see critical viewing skills as part of that as well, Harry, and what else?
I do. Well, and one thing that from our perspective, we would want to wed with the critical thinking skills a position. That when you see something, it has a message. And again, like I spoke of at the beginning, our message is fundamentally about Jesus Christ and what that means in the world today and what that means for the specifically Christian family and for everyone. So we have a task in the church to have people shape their critical thinking skills in a specifically Christian mindset and bring that to the dialogue with the mass media.
Because what is picked up on the tube, the values that are there are not always in conformity with those that you're espousing in the church.
And sometimes they are. And to be able to say that there's harmony here as well. It's not just a completely polar opposite deal going on here, that we can have things of value that actually say gospel-valued things without using the words Jesus Christ specifically.
Okay. We're going to need to take a break here just for a moment, but I want to draw attention to our viewers that in the middle of the show is an announcement about the Media Awareness Conference that's coming up May 6th at Concordia University, and all are invited to that. So let's take a look at that. Yes, as we return to our second half of today's program on media literacy, we'd like to welcome back Pat Crovasier from Del Valley Independent School District and Father Harry Dean from St. John Henry Newman. Not Henry Newman, just John
John
Newman.
Newman, right. Two different
There was a
saints.
John Henry Newman.
Right, right.
As we were discussing in the first half, I recall, because we're going to be through Austin Metropolitan Ministries establishing a media literacy network that involves not just the religious community but the educational community, but taking those principles of that Liz Tolman talks about in her center about when you are looking at television, to be illiterate is to be aware of it, to analyze it, to reflect upon it, and to act upon your experience. And those four principles, I think that you were just at the break, Harry, saying that you're going beyond the analysis, the awareness and analysis, to the reflection and the action part.
That's correct, and it's more work than that. For us, that's the fundamental beginning work. That's the gathering the tools together kind of work, the analysis and so forth. Then we would want to take it a step further and say, with those tools, bring your specifically Christian perspective, the teachings of Jesus, the things that we talk about in the teachings of our church, and say, that's what we're going to use to be able to measure these things, to say, what is this message? Is it consistent with what I believe? Is it healthy for my family spiritually and otherwise?
Okay. Well, I think that, Pat, I'd like for you, if you would, since you're going to be looking at this next package for the first time, give us an initial reaction to it, because Harry was the one who helped edit it, and it goes into all four of those principles. So let's see how those apply as we look at our second set that will involve Liz Tolman and also John Wright from the University of Texas at our February Media Awareness Conference.
What is the role and function of mass media in our culture? Is it there just to make money, or is it there also to inspire and educate? And there's no easy answer to that. It's got to be both. But there are people who are very focused on that, and particularly the cultural environment movement, which was established originally by George Gerbner, asks these broader questions. There's something called the Stockholders Movement, and there are several organizations. If you want to know about them, I can tell you because I have some references to them. But there's a whole movement for social responsibility for people who own broadcast stock. And groups like United Methodist Women have, which owns a lot of portfolio stock, has made comments to those who, NBC and ABC and CBS and Warner Brothers and all of that. There's a whole movement of social responsibility, corporate responsibility at the corporate level. But where it's really going to happen is at the corporate line of what is the corporate policy of how much is enough. And Gandhi said, there is enough in this world for everyone's need, but not everyone's greed. And that's the corporate responsibility we need to establish, not only in relation to television or programming, but everything else. And if we establish that in our country, television will follow.
I certainly think that there are ways in which kids can get centered in a totally non-religious way or a religious way. There are lots of ways in which kids can be brought to an awareness of the significance of everything that goes on in their environment and every decision and choice that they make. And I don't think that extra awareness that some kids have is ever going to be mass marketable or distributable by a mass medium. But I want to tell you a media literacy parable very quickly. But I did belong to a church in which I took on with my wife the most unlikely and most difficult job that I know of, which is teaching 7th and 8th grade Sunday school. Combined 7th and 8th grade kids are a terror on Sunday morning, as anyone can tell you. After 2 weeks of chaos, I said to them, what would you really like to do in this time? And they said, form a rock group and make a video. I said, okay, you're on. And they did. They didn't just make a video. They made a full-length, homemade version of Jesus Christ Superstar with the original record as its soundtrack. They made a 90-minute long video. It opened to rave reviews to a large audience consisting of their relatives in the church basement. I still have a copy of it. I'd be glad to share it with you. They elected members of their own group to play different roles. I have to tell you just one thing, that both Judas Iscariot and Jesus Christ were played by young women, and very effectively.
Okay, Pat.
Oh, I thought that one. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know,
right.
but, well, I mean, he's talking about 7th and 8th graders, and we're going to take it to 5th and 6th graders. They love working with video. That's something that they watch all the time. They love working with computers, and you're doing some very similar things with them. So we may not get into some of the same reflection that you would, but certainly they are learning about choices and about decision making, and will be producing some of their own videos. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they decide to create videos on, or to do a newscast, whatever. The other component that I think is going to be fun is introducing that interactive element. I think that we're very fortunate in this particular Austin broadcast market that we are getting a lot of two-way communication in terms of they are all accepting email, and I guarantee you some of our kids are going to be emailing stations and responding to some of the things that they see.
And isn't that interesting? In other words, they used to say write letters to your congressman.
Right.
But now you can email your stations
Right.
and register
Right.
your feelings about.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Would you like to add to this whole action component? Because we had both the do your own video kind of thing. You're mentioning the email. Liz Toman mentioned getting involved with corporations in terms of stockholders meetings and so on. I mean, that was a lot, but can you add to it?
Well, I think in terms of action, I think about what he said, that the children told a story. You know, we're about telling a story of salvation, a story of Christ. That's a history of God with God's people. And so by being able to do what he did, they took action. They took the medium into their own hands, and they said, this is who we are, and this is how we connect ourselves to that story. You get them used to the mechanics, the machinery. It's kind of like taking a paintbrush in your hand and painting a picture, and at the end you have an expression of art, of who you are, of life. And I think that that's a way of being able to kind of take some ownership of it as well.
All right. I've thought too, through Austin Metropolitan Ministries, that involves not only Christian but Jewish and Muslim congregations and members, that if we were to do a video using young people from those different communities, how you would find a set of values that was common ground. Or if you were to write a 10 Commandments of good television that would be applicable to people in all aspects of society, both the secular and the religious. Those are the kinds of exercises that I think zero in on what we do have in common in a pluralistic society.
And very important there in terms of the email interaction, since that's so immediate, to say, okay, we complain a lot, but when we see something in there in the value range that we want to affirm it.
Yes,
Let them know
right,
for
right.
sure that's the range that you really would like to see coming into your home.
Right, supportive as well as critical.
Absolutely.
Email letters.
That's right.
Have you ever stopped to think about what the Apostle Paul would have been like if he had email instead of snail mail to write his epistles?
We'd have a whole lot more biblical scholarship going on, I know that much.
Okay, well, we'll leave that one there for the moment. But let's look at one other piece here. This comes from the Center for Media Literacy as kind of a thought stimulator for groups that might want to invite folks in to do a workshop on this. Let's take a look at that.
If your best friend leaves home, it may be because you're watching too much television. Learn to watch television sensibly.
So how do you like that?
That's wonderful. That's a terrific message.
Yeah. So what do you like about it?
I think that would be very thought-provoking for some children that would see that and then go look at their pets and think, gee, maybe I should be out taking that dog for a walk.
Did you have any other reactions to it?
Well, that the child is alone, and that this is an occasion perhaps to say this can be something that can be done together for later dialogue over the things that you saw, to discuss those. Have it be matter of course that a family or a couple of a brother and sister or friends come in, and if they're going to sit in front of the television, have it be something where they don't just walk away nonplussed, that there's something to say about it, and they are compelled to have something to say.
By the way, I think that there were two points made at the end. If your best friend is leaving home, maybe it's because you're watching too much television. So that begs the question is, how much is too much? And then the second one is, so learn to watch television sensibly. And what does that mean? And in the few minutes that we have left, would you please answer that for us?
Well, gosh, I guess I would look at it from the standpoint of you've only got so many hours in the day, and if you're a child, you're in school for X number of hours, and by the time you get home, you've got homework to do, and hopefully you're out playing with your friends, and so where does television fit in within that whole family scheme of what is our schedule? And I think that that is something that families should be looking at, the whole schedule, and it's just one part of that child's life.
Some parents are beginning to ration television and say there's so much time that you can spend on this, maybe say a couple of hours, and the first hour has to be educational, you know, PBS type. But that does mean that every parent, every individual has to ask how much is too much, and as far as watching it sensibly, help us with that one, Harry.
Well, the sensibility, of course, for me would be both a time factor and, of course, a content factor. And you just mentioned that some, ration, and they say it must be a certain kind. I know parents who will take and have videotapes available, just a shelf of videotapes, and that rotates in and out, so they're not watching the same thing over and over again. And that way they have more content control, more content certainty. I think the sensibility has to be, is a family sitting down and saying, what do we find morally offensive or morally very gratifying together here, and then have the children be able to sit on their own while the parents are away and have that rolling around up there.
Yeah, to be sure and do it together is, I think, the point that you're coming back to. Well, we would like to thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Pat and Harry, and would like to encourage all of our viewers to be thinking about May the 6th between 6:15 and 8:15 out at Concordia University on 3400 IH-35 North, and we'll continue this conversation then. I'm Richard Thompson, and peace be with you.